Austin. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Atheist Experience. We are live. Today is Sunday, August 18th, 2019, unless it's not. But we are 1 month away from the ACA's annual Bat Cruise, and while everything isn't finalized, I can say that there was some work done on the website. So if you had gone on and tried to buy your tickets for the Bat Cruise already and encountered an error related to registration or a web, I think we've got that sorted. And there's a, if you go to atheist-community.org, up on the main page, there's a link there to the Bat Cruise, which will take you right to the internal shop. And it's worth noting that the Bat Cruise is like the first of the events there, and there's a picture of like the Bat Cruise. And then there's an add to cart button. If you only need one ticket, go ahead and click add to cart. And if you decide later you want more, you can go over to the cart and manipulate it. But if you need several tickets, click on the actual picture and then you can pick out, you know, the number there. And then you'll have to fill in your name and contact information and stuff so that we know who bought a ticket, because that would be nice. But
and you will not be mailed a ticket. We'll just check you off as you come in the boat.
You just arrive, show up. We'll have a checklist, and I think we're probably right at half sold at this moment. So
I have my ticket.
We're 1 month out. I got my ticket yesterday while I was testing the website. But yeah, we're a month out from that. Also, a special note of thanks to Joe Pangrak, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, for a donation that's going to make sure everybody here at the building gets ice cream tonight.
Oh.
So yeah, we do the show. We used to do the show years ago at the Public Access Theater in here in Austin, and we were on local public access TV. Now it's internet only, and we do it from the Atheist Community of Austin's Free Thought Library, 1507 West Koenig Lane. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person's welcome to come down here. The building's open 7 days a week, pretty much from 11 to 9. There's always something going on. I know there's Philosophy Club meetups on Wednesdays. We're recording tons of shows. There's Secular Sexuality and Atheist Vanguard and Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience and well, pretty much almost one for every coffee mug in this shot right now. There are a couple extra coffee mugs.
25 million.
Yeah, and it's weird because my named bottle of Coke Zero is on your side. And yours is on my side.
Oh,
that way we could be closer together without having to slide into the middle in front of the screen. Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm all right. I had some great barbecue today, and so I'm ready for a nap.
I don't think I announced you at all. I'm Matt, in case you didn't know that. This is Don Baker.
Hey, good to be here.
You had great barbecue where?
At a neighbor's house. A neighbor throws they call brisket off, which is a competition of sorts. And there's tons and tons of good food,
So basically, you're just bragging.
Yeah.
It's not like, hey, here's a cool restaurant you guys can go to. I had barbecue that none of you can ever get. Yeah, good job.
I made some great beans.
Awesome.
Okay.
So in addition to the Bat Cruise coming up, there's a bunch of other stuff. On my schedule, which is fairly hectic, I have a debate Tuesday night. It's online, so it's not anything you can go to, but you can tune in. I'll be debating Jay Dyer on the existence of God, and I think he's going to be presenting some kind of transcendental argument or whatever. It'll be posted eventually on the Atheist Debates project once it's done. We tried to do this a week or so ago and ran into technical difficulties, but we're hoping to do that again. Next Sunday, and actually, Mark, did we make a decision about shifting showtime? You can answer in a minute. But next Sunday is special because Andrew Seidel from Freedom from Religion Foundation is coming down, giving a talk, talking about his book. He's going to be guesting on several of the shows. But I also have a debate here in Austin at the AT&T Amphitheater Conference Center thing on campus at 6 p.m. And so for those of you who are aware, this show runs from 4:30 to sometime after 6 is when we stop. So either I'm not going to do the show next week and I'll be over prepping and doing the debate, or there's a chance that we will air Atheist Experience early, like directly after Talk Heathen, and get that done. I don't think we completely made up our mind on that. So stay tuned and be ready to call in even earlier if that's the case. But yeah, this debate is... it's something. So I work with the Bible and Beer Consortium, and I've done a bunch of debates with their Ezra. I don't know what his official title is: president, executive, HMFIC, whatever. He's a friend of mine, and I've done a number of debates with them. Normally in Dallas, and they're branching out to include Austin, and this will be the first major Bible and Beer Consortium debate. And the debate topic is: how do you resolve the conflict between religious liberties and LGBT rights? Now, for clarity, and I will say this again when the debate actually happens, we are not debating rights or what rights people have. This is about you've got this group of people who think that they get to be bigots because of their religious beliefs, and this group of people who are like, your religious liberties lose every time when it comes to what my actual rights are. It gets down to separation of church and state and a bunch of other stuff. So this isn't going to be a debate about whether or not somebody's a person or whether or not they have rights or anything else. From my view, it's going to be an education about church-state separation and trying to let people know that, if your religion is against X, okay, you don't have to do it, but that doesn't mean you have any right to dictate to what anybody else could be. Sure. But I'm looking forward to some interesting discussion about that, and that debate, too, will be up on my Atheist Debates thing. And the last thing is I'm going to Dragon Con, which is the end of the month, Labor Day weekend. I think it's Labor Day weekend. And I'll be doing Magic and Skepticism, a couple panels. I'm working with Kurt Anderson, Jamie and Swiss, and most of the people on the Skeptics track. So if you're in the Atlanta area or if you're going to Dragon Con, I know there's going to be like 90,000 people there, but if you happen to see like a bald head from the back and you suspect that it's me, don't touch that person. And then when you find out it is me, then you can hug me, shake my hand, whatever. Yeah. I don't want people getting assaulted because, I thought you were Matt. No. So yeah, that's pretty much everything that's going on. We'll have more information about the back cruise, and we'll make some decisions about what's going on with next week's shows, and we'll get them publicized as well. How are you?
I'm all right.
You just got back from vacation-y?
I took almost 2 weeks in Europe.
Wow.
And it was awesome, except I had my wallet stolen.
Oh, no.
That's no fun. I got pickpocketed.
So now you got to get like new license, new credit cards.
Yeah, but that was all. That's a minor thing relative to not having money when you're abroad.
Yeah.
Anyway, I had to call a friend, and a friend helped me out, so we're good.
Cool. I'm guessing that you, as a topic for today, might have something that we would refer to as a failure.
Yeah, another failure. I had talked about miracles before, and there's been a lot of calls about miracles lately. Mm-hmm. And we actually had last time I was on, I had a call from a guy who was promoting some sort of probabilistic argument for the resurrection, and ultimately he was referring to a paper that was about miracles, and he sent that to me. And so part of today's topic is kind of a refutation of at least part of that paper. It's one of those fractally wrong things. It's sort of like wrong everywhere, but this is certainly something that is separable from the paper itself. And
cool.
This is show number 65, if you're keeping track. Some people...
It's failure number 65.
Failure number 65.
It's show number
10 million.
24th, 23rd season and something or other.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So some people believe that miracles are evidence of God, and I want to explain why that's not the case today. And some people think that multiple miracles are even more convincing evidence of God, and they're not. So that's kind of the gist of the show. A miracle might be defined as a specific event that would not have happened if only the natural order had been operating. This is from that paper, by the way, and that's a reasonable working definition. But these things are truly rare, and truly unexplained, and truly not reproducible.
Can I jump in?
Yes, please do.
So that operating definition, go through it one more time.
A miracle might be defined as a specific event that would not have happened if only the natural order had been operating.
Sure. So what caught me is that you said these things are rare. Now, I would say they're so rare that they're non-existent, because is there ever a demonstration that the natural order wasn't working? The fact that something happens that you don't understand doesn't mean the natural order was not working.
That's right. In fact, one of my lines here is, I know no case where the natural laws have been
How would you even prove that?
Well, I know of none, right? So
no, but I mean, how would they prove it?
How would they prove it?
Oh, hey, here's a case where the natural order wasn't working.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. If you know of a case where the natural order wasn't working that would fit this, please call in and tell us not only what it was, but how you know that the natural order wasn't working.
But what is really going on here is that what we're getting are stories about events.
Right.
And the listener has no way of knowing what actually happened, and the listener being us, and so we And there's sort of an implied argument from ignorance here that if you can't explain this miracle, God must have done it.
Yep.
That seems to be the kind of the way things work. And unfortunately, the same reasoning, I'll put that in scare quotes, works with the invisible pink unicorns and magic farting sky pixies or whatever, crazy thing you want to have is responsible for this. So I have a better definition, which I think is, I encourage folks to, kick the tires and see if it's any good. It's an unconfirmed or unconfirmable story about a mysterious event that is used to market God.
See, now that though, so you've gone this is me just being pedantic.
Okay.
But that can't be the definition of a miracle. That can't, your new definition can't be a miracle is a story about something, but because the story is not the miracle. As a matter of fact, stories about things that people think are miraculous are anything but miraculous. They're mundane. They happen all the time.
Right.
So
okay. Well, you got me there.
Maybe.
But this definition fits a wide variety of religious claim miracles, and I invite the audience to send me counterexamples. I want to explore this definition a little bit today.
Yeah, calling about something that's a miracle that is not just a story that you don't have an explanation for, but some evidence for something and how you determined that it was miraculous and not just
that would be a one way to do it.
Unknown or misunderstood.
Yeah, but we're gonna hit some different angles here.
Cool.
Let's see. And as you said, the miracles abound, right? And so one of the key issues here is unconfirmed. And something that is truly unconfirmable is not evidence of anything. It's just a mystery. And at worst, it's a con. So it's really sort of something that's unexplained and doesn't act as an explanation for God, doesn't provide evidence for anything. And there is also the category of confirmable but unconfirmed, meaning that with some investigation you could find out more, and in some cases the information is intentionally hidden by people who are doing the marketing. And in some cases it's just because the people listening to the story are lazy and they don't go and explore it. So unconfirmed can be a lot of different things here. And let's come up with a couple examples. So hidden information or laziness examples. Well, Mary in the Bible was a virgin due to a mistranslation that became ossified dogma.
I'm pretty sure she was a virgin because that's the way she was born, except that virginity is a social construct that's absolute bullshit. So, but go ahead.
Well, the original story was she was a young woman who bore a child, and because of a copying error, she became a virgin who bore a child, and the religious dogma ossified around this, and this is sort of a well-known problem.
Except, sorry.
What?
So I'm just going to keep interrupting you all day.
Please do.
I'm not convinced it's a copying error. Matter of fact, I think claiming that it is a bit problematic because where we mostly get that is in the book of Matthew. And Matthew is desperate to have Jesus fulfill as many prophetic things as he can dream up or imagine. Mm-hmm. And so you've got the passage in Isaiah where there's a possible translation error where something that was originally young woman was translated as virgin. And then, is that the copy error that you're talking about that Matthew then kind of lifted to do virgin? Okay. I thought you were talking about a copy error in Matthew. It could be a copy error. At least we can't show that it's not.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay,
but how much more likely is it a copy error versus an actual miraculous virgin birth?
Well, that's the problem because no, because this is why I asked this. If the copy error is in Isaiah, then the real question is how likely is it that it's a copy error versus Isaiah was speaking about a virgin? Because Isaiah doesn't speak about a virgin birth in that sense. So, this you're kind of conflating what happens in Isaiah and Matthew.
Okay, I got some more.
I'm just trying to stem off the first year Bible college students who are like, whoa, hang on a minute, could be this here. Yeah. You're right, though. When it comes down to, is it more likely that somebody made something up, there was a translation error, there was an attempt to fulfill prophecy, or an actual virgin woman gave birth to a divine child? We know which one of those is more likely.
Right. Okay. I happen to be a little bit of an expert on the Guadalupe and Juan Diego mythology. armchair expert. How about that? And we know for a fact that the Juan Diego's cloak was a painting. It was done around 1550, and it was based on Spanish imagery that came over from Spain. And I've done some research on that. And the cloak is a basis for a big money-making scheme today. In 1888, the cloak was repainted, and there was a miracle. It was a miracle that the cloak hadn't degraded since the original. Imagine that. Okay, you have you replace one painting with another painting, and the new painting is undegraded. Isn't that a miracle? It's another miracle that they removed the crown off of her head between the two.
So wait, there was one painting, and somebody made a new painting, and the new painting is different, and they're claiming that it didn't degrade.
Okay, well, I'm not giving you the whole story. The whole story, the original miracle claim was that Juan Diego wore this cloak and gathered up roses that had bloomed in December when they weren't supposed to bloom, and gathered them up and showed them to a bishop. And as he dropped the roses, this image appeared on his cloak. That's the mythology around it. But it's really a painting. And there probably wasn't even a Juan Diego. Okay. This cloak was made of a cactus fiber that was supposed to have decayed over the centuries, but it hasn't decayed, and it's claimed to be a miracle that it hasn't decayed.
Okay.
So, okay. And then it was also a miracle that the crown disappeared from this cloak, the crown on Mary's head.
Wouldn't that be decay?
There you go. But
solved it. Next on Unsolved Mysteries.
Okay, so the gist of it is that this whole Juan Diego thing is pretty much a scam, and pretty much a money-making mechanism for the Catholic Church, and it's full of holes as far as all their miracle claims. There's even a miracle claim that some ophthalmologist looked at the eyes of the image. Okay, ophthalmologist, eyes of the image.
Okay.
Yes, you should be scratching your head by now, and found that the image that he saw in those eyes was of the bishop, that supposedly, as if it were like a photograph. Anyway, it's truly hilarious.
No, wait. So there's a painting that has eyes.
A painting that has eyes.
And an ophthalmologist looked at it.
Yes.
And determined that those were the eyes of somebody else.
No, that the eyes themselves had a reflection in them of this miraculous event of the cloak being revealed to of Juan Diego, effectively.
So basically, the ophthalmologist had watched so much CSI where it was like zoom in and enhance this sector.
He was
and
Catholic.
But he saw there was an image reflected in the eyes.
According to him, right.
Okay. So he's in his brain doing the isolate sector 1 and zoom in and enhance thing. That's bullshit, by the way.
Like that, yeah. Okay. And when you zoom enough, you get a lot of white noise.
Yeah. And it looks a lot like a miraculous vision.
Yeah, okay. Another Catholic miracle was Mother Teresa. She's now a saint, and as part of that process, there were some miracles associated with her. And the first miracle was that a woman with tuberculosis was treated for tuberculosis by her doctors. Meanwhile, she prayed for a cure to her cancer, and which she did not have, and later was cancer-free.
So when I was a kid, like
it's a miracle.
On late Friday nights, there was that old joke of, the guy standing around with a banana in his ear, and he's like, why are you standing there with a banana in your ear? And he's like, it keeps the elephants away. And there's no elephants around here. See, it's working.
Yeah.
Hey, I prayed for a cure to the cancer that I didn't have, and I don't have cancer.
Okay. Woo. Right. All right, I'm going to skip one here. So, if a typical miracle is just a partially hidden fraud, what does that say about the rest of the miracles? And what does it say about the people promoting them? And the answer is it's marketing. And the marketing thing is kind of interesting. In every single one of these miracle stories I've heard has been about marketing God of some sort or marketing the religion. And in the following examples, notice that unverifiable things that don't have a marketing angle are not miracles. So the next group of things will be things that are unverified. They don't have a marketing angle, and so they're not considered miracles. Okay? From the Bible, Lot impregnates both of his daughters, despite allegedly being too drunk to notice they were bouncing on him. And I would say that's a miracle.
It comes close.
The natural order of things, the male anatomy just doesn't work that way. If you got somebody bouncing on you,
evidently they hadn't heard of whiskey dick yet.
Right, whiskey dick. That's right. Lightning hitting churches, but less frequently brothels. That's not a miracle.
Well,
for some reason.
To be fair, there are probably more churches than brothels.
Yeah, and churches are built on higher ground and these sorts of things. UFO sightings, not miracles. Let's see. Child molesting Catholic priests have rarely gone to jail for their crimes. Not a miracle. There's one that hit me because I was in the Bosnia and Croatia area. There's a shrine there called Medjugorje. And it's interesting in that there's a couple of people who were kids back in the 60s and 70s and who are now in their 50s, they're my age, and they regularly get Marian apparitions, supposedly. And these people are still doing that, and it's a big Catholic thing. And what's interesting is that the Catholic Church is kind of hemming and hawing about whether this is a miracle or not. And I think it's because they're not making money from it yet. They're kind of iffy on this
alternatively, if they could find a way to make money from it, I think it would be declared a miracle.
That's right.
J.C. Eberhard and I debated a couple of people who were Mariologists, and they were experts.
Oh yeah, it's interesting stuff.
I don't know if they got visions or not, but
okay.
But they were experts in Mariology. By the way, I have a slight correction. I misspoke a minute ago when I was talking about Isaiah and Matthew. So first of all, it's Matthew and Luke that talk about Mary being a virgin. And when I said Isaiah doesn't really talk about a virgin giving birth, what I was trying to say is the passage there, under most reasonable interpretations, talks about a young woman giving birth to a son, and his name shall be Emmanuel, which isn't Jesus.
Right. Yeah. So there's another little wart on that whole thing too.
Yeah.
One more thing on this group of people who are claiming Marian visions. They actually get messages from Mary, and all of the messages are drivel. Here's one: little children, pray, pray, pray.
That's the whole message?
That's the whole message.
From Mary. Mary, Mary, why you bugging?
Yeah, right. Okay. We talked about miracles. What about multiple miracles? Well, if there's a financial incentive to promulgate a miracle, there's going to be more financial incentive to promulgate multiple miracles. And so more miracles are just more marketing. And because a miracle is not evidence of anything, multiple miracles are not evidence of anything either. The quote is, the plural of anecdote is not data.
The other thing to remember is that we're not talking about multiple miracles. We're talking about multiple claims about miracles.
Yep.
Yep.
So yeah, definitely don't buy it. Check out the claims first, and even without a financial incentive, miracles are memes, which have their own reasons and mechanisms for promulgation. So think of X-Files playing into alien abduction stories, right? And what the little green men look like, or gray men. Gray. Yeah, got to fix that.
I'll send them to you.
So miracles are wholly unconvincing to atheists. They should be unconvincing to everybody. Anybody trying to sell you something based on miracles clearly lacks anything more substantial, and they're working a con. And this is And Christianity certainly relies heavily on miracles, and that's a failure of Christianity.
Amen.
Amen. Let's take calls.
Cool. Anybody in particular you want to start with?
I haven't thought that far advanced.
All right.
Go ahead.
Well, we're going to start with Michael in Florida. Thanks for waiting. You're on with Don and Matt.
Hi.
Hey.
Yeah, I was just calling because I'm not a believer in God, but I believe that we have a soul or some kind of, you could call it just a subconscious, but there's something there that helps us.
It's curious because I think Don and I would both agree that we have a part of our mind that is correctly labeled as a subconscious, and neither of us would agree that we have anything that would be correctly labeled a soul.
So are you referring to something that sort of lives beyond our physical bodies?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know of any evidence for that. Do you?
Well, personally, whenever I was a kid, first of all, I was probably still in training pants. And my brother, he was 5 years older. He took the mattress off the bed in the bedroom we were playing. He put it under the bed, and he made a little tiny gap between it and the wall. He was trying to fit in there. He couldn't fit. And as little as I was, I knew that I could fit in that little hole. So, and I crawled in that hole. All of a sudden, he grabs a hold of the bed and kicked with his legs and shoved the mattress into me, into the wall, as hard as he could. I was probably 2, 3 at the oldest. All of a sudden, him, the mattress, the bed, me, we all flew backwards away from the wall. So that to me is not just a subconscious. That's something else.
I don't understand what you're saying about what happened. So you crawled between a mattress and a wall, and your brother tried to squish you between the mattress and the wall, and then what happened?
And I was almost dead. I can remember blacking out. I couldn't breathe. It was like the boa constrictor. Every time I took a breath, I couldn't inhale less.
Okay, so you're being squished, and this lack of oxygen begins to deprive your brain of oxygen, and you start to pass out. What the hell's that got to do with the soul?
Because what made the whole mattress, my brother and me, the whole bed, everything flew away from the wall. What did that? A 2, 3-year-old kid or something else?
I have no idea, but first of all, I don't believe that happened.
Okay.
I believe that you're convinced that it happened, but you're talking about, how old are you now?
I'm 58.
58?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're talking about a 56-year-old memory that you've massaged over the years. Why on earth would you think it's accurate? Hell, I don't remember anything from when I was 2 or 3, but I can tell you things that happened to me when I was 16, which I know I'm wrong about.
Well, I understand that. A lot of times people are wrong, mistaken. Sure, stories change over the years. But this is something that happened that I'm never going to forget. Why would I change a story to myself?
Because we all do that.
This story,
we all do that. We know that memory is faulty, and I'm not saying that you're intentionally changing the story. I'm not accusing you of
deception,
intentional deception. It's just what we do. But you know, first of all, we have no way of investigating this or testing it or whatever else. And all I have is a really vague description of the bed and everything flew away from the wall. Well, for all I know, your parent came in and yanked the bed away in order to rescue you, and you were unconscious, and then they drug your brother out to punish him or whatever else and laid you on the bed, and then your brain. It reminds me of near-death experiences that people claim to have. Because what actually happens...
It wasn't that.
Okay. Congratulations, Dr. Michael. I'm glad you've determined it wasn't a near-death experience.
I didn't almost die. I almost passed out, more like what you said the first time.
Now, hang on, because I bet if we rewind this call, I'm the one that said you almost passed out, and you said you almost died. I bet if we rewind the call, that's exactly what was said.
I almost passed out. I said it's more like that. I almost passed out. I don't think I almost died. I think I was going to die if it had kept up. And my mother came in afterwards because she didn't know what happened. I don't know what made a noise. I don't know. You're right. But
maybe your brother pulled the bed away from the wall.
Here's another theory. You were afraid and you had a burst of adrenaline and you pushed it.
Exactly. But I don't think that a 2-year-old kid usually does stuff like that. Usually they die. That's the first time.
2-year-old kids aren't usually being squished to death. So, of course, we're under an exceptional. But here, what the hell does any of that have to do with the soul? Because what you really have is a memory of an event that may or may not be accurate and something that happened that you don't have an explanation for. How did you get to a soul from that?
Because that's just the first one. I'll give you 2 more examples. That was
I don't, Michael. I don't need
You need a plural of the anecdote.
I don't need 10 examples that have nothing to do with the soul. I want an explanation of how this got you to the notion of a soul.
Because I'm just saying that there's something there that keeps us alive, keeps us going, even when we're unable to comprehend the whole world around us.
And yet people die every second.
Right. Sometimes it happens, yeah. But the majority of times, most people have an instinct for survival, something that keeps them going. Even when they're a kid and
I agree. We have an instinct for survival. What the hell does that have to do with the soul?
Because, like I said, if you let me finish, there's another time when I was in
I don't need an... Here's the thing, Michael. This is what you're not getting. I agree with you. We have an instinct for survival. That's what our brain does. If there's nothing about the first story that necessitates a soul, then let's admit that first story is not in any way evidence for a soul.
Okay,
you don't get to add up 10 things. You don't get to add up 10 things that aren't evidence for the soul independently and claim that the 10 of them together are evidence for a soul. That's not the way evidence works.
I'm just saying I'm going to give you one from the beginning, from the middle, and recently. And if you don't want to hear them, that's fine. But the other 2 are not the same story.
Give us your very best one.
Okay,
and then tell me why you didn't start with the best one.
I'm just saying I started at the beginning, when I was a kid.
Okay, but
that's where it
Michael,
starts.
Are we at least in agreement that there's no evidence for a soul in that first story?
In the first story, sure. But if you put them all 3 together, then maybe you'll see it.
No. I just explained this. If I have one story that's not evidence for soul, and then I present a second story that's not evidence for soul, and a third story that's not evidence for soul, I haven't come up with a combination of stories that's evidence for a fucking soul. That's not the way this works.
You're not listening to the other stories to know if they have anything to do with the soul. And like I said,
why didn't you? I tell you what, if I ask you what evidence do you have for a soul, and you tell me a story that has nothing to do with a soul, why the fuck would I listen to another story from you?
Because I'm saying the soul's the same as a subconscious, a guardian spirit, a soul, whatever you want to call it.
Those things aren't the same. Those just pretending.
Yeah,
okay, congratulations.
We all have a subconscious.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So what would tell me whenever I was
instead of telling stories, why don't you say why you think that there's something supernatural here, something that goes beyond our death?
Because I'm trying to tell you, but you keep refusing to listen to the other story.
Well, you should led with it.
That's not an answer, sir. When Don asks you a question and you say, "I'm trying to tell you, but you won't let me," now all you're doing is pouting. Answer the question.
I'm not pouting because if you don't want, what's the question? If you don't want to hear
what evidence do you have for a soul?
It's like I said, to me, you can consider your subconscious as a soul. It does more than just.
Okay. Sorry.
We need to have. We're going to do a special episode of the show where we talk about what the fuck evidence is.
Yeah, we need to do that.
Because when I ask for evidence and you say, well, we can view the subconscious as a soul, I no longer give a shit. Because you know what? I can view this bottle of Coke Zero as God. I can view this phone as peanut butter. I'd be wrong, but I can do it. That's not evidence. Telling me that you're convinced that the subconscious is a soul is not evidence of anything other than you believe this. And the thing we're trying to get to is, why do you believe it? Why do you think that this is true? And why should anybody else believe it? If somebody had called up and said, oh, I've got evidence for a soul, and then they, when asked for evidence of the soul, said, well, you could look at the soul as if it's just your self-conscious, or subconscious, sorry.
No.
That's not evidence. Why would you call in and say you have evidence for something, or that you have a reasoned belief for something, and then just say, oh, because basically what you're saying there is, I like the notion of a soul. I don't actually have any evidence of a soul or anything that's going to exist beyond us, and so I'm going to look around at the things that I don't have an explanation for, like consciousness and subconscious and weird circumstances where you might be passed out and something strange happens. And so you're taking all of these things that you don't have an explanation for and saying, I could look at that and say it's a soul. Well, congratulations.
Yeah. You
can do that with anything. That doesn't get us to evidence, and it's not how you go about showing that something's real.
A lot of the soul stuff seems to be wishful thinking, right? Of I'm gonna see my relatives, when I die, and they're still with me. These sorts of things. The idea of a soul is comforting, but it's wishful thinking. All evidence that we have is that when your brain dies, you die, and there's no more to it.
Yeah, I've pointed out, I don't know, a gazillion times now that the soul is the single most dead concept in all of theology because of what we know about the brain. We don't know everything about the brain, but it's like if I'm rolling a die, and it's a standard 6-sided die, half of what you would roll at a craps table, and it comes up a 4. We roll it, boom, it's a 4. And somebody says, why did that dice roll come up a 4? And your answer is, I have a guardian angel who, when I roll the dice, makes sure that it lands on 4 when I need it to land on 4. You've come up with an unfalsifiable proposition that might be comforting. It's the same thing we do with lucky socks and rabbit's feet. It's about confirmation bias and stuff like that. And so if we pick up that die and we roll it again, and it comes up a 2, what? My guardian angel didn't make it come up a 4 because we didn't need it to come up a 4 then.
That's right.
That's what's going on. And so when we look at the soul, in a die roll, there's no room left to reasonably posit external influence. We know about physics, we know about die roll, we can measure this, we know that the odds on a standard 6-sided die is that 1 out of 6 times it's going to land on this specific number. We can roll them and roll them and roll them and roll them and simulate it and everything else, and they fall into this normative distribution for fair dice. That's just what happens. So there's no room left in a die roll to say, an angel made it land that way. There's no room left in the things that we identify or used to label as the soul. Given what we know about the brain and how it functions, about how our memories are malleable, our personalities are malleable, everything about you can be reset. You can get amnesia. Everything can fundamentally change.
Yep.
You can sever the corpus callosum and wind up with 2 distinct, independently communicating personalities within a single head. There's no room left to posit a soul. Because one view of the soul is that it's the ghost in the machine. I have a spirit that is basically guiding and directing this meat sack around the planet, and it's making decisions, and it is the thing that is going to be judged morally as good or bad or whatever.
Right.
The problem is, take that split brain example, which I've used before. If 2 personalities in the same brain, they communicate independently, one of them believes in a God, one of them doesn't. Now, does that mean that once upon a time this brain had a soul and now the soul is completely moved over to one hemisphere and the other hemisphere is just screwed? Does it mean that each of those have half of a soul? None of this actually makes any sense at all. But the bigger issue is that every time you posit some space for a soul, every new discovery that we find about how the brain works closes another door for the soul. And God's not there to open a window. I know they say that when a door closes, somewhere God opens a window. You don't get to posit that. It's the same thing we did with evolution when we talk about this diversity of life where we have common ancestry and then it branches out like a tree. And you're like, but that's where God intervened.
Yeah.
God flipped this little DNA switch to make humans distinct from the other great apes.
He kills and messes with the sex lives of animals.
Yeah.
That's the main way you would do that.
Yeah. It's, I get it. Okay, you don't believe in God, but you do believe in a soul. If somebody asks you why you believe in something and you tell a story and they say, I don't see what that has to do with the thing you're talking about, it's never going to be good to go on to another story.
Yeah.
If people are looking for evidence. Oh, here's something that happened to me. Because first of all, I do not believe that what you are describing accurately represents what happened. I will believe that it accurately represents what you remember, what is in your mind. It's like when somebody tells me they were abducted by aliens. Do I believe they were abducted by aliens? No. Am I willing to accept that they are convinced they were? Yeah. There seem to be plenty of people who are otherwise rational, and for whatever reason, they've interpreted a certain experience as this was an alien abduction. And I'm fine, you can tell me your story, and when an alien abductee or claimed alien abductee tells me their story, I'm going to say, how does that prove that it was aliens? How does that prove it was aliens?
Sure.
Because that's what skepticism is, asking those questions that most people are too uncomfortable to ask because we're so terrified of not knowing. And some of us are so terrified, or some people are so terrified of not fitting in with everybody else. You know, I don't share your God belief, but I'm spiritual but not religious. Or I think there's a soul. You know, don't crucify me the way you will those guys on the Atheist show who are telling you, you know, oh, no, you don't have evidence and everything else. I'm kind of on your side. I'm just not, you know, all the way there. It's cowardice. And I don't mean that in the sense that it's a character flaw for the individual, that you're a terrible person. We are all guilty of it almost all the time. And the goal, as far as I can tell, should be, when you're made aware of this, to work to change it. But where are we going next?
Oh, my goodness. Let's take a theist.
Yeah, there's 5.
5.
Or 4 and 4.5. We'll go with Rafael in Florida. You're on with Don and Matt.
Oh, man. How's it going, guys?
Hey.
Mixed bag. How are you?
Yeah, so I'm doing all right. The main question I wanted to ask is, let's say you have two beings. Let's say a pedophile priest who spends his life hurting children, and atheist who is a doctor, spends his life helping children. What do you use to determine which being is more moral than the other?
I don't. So there's about 12 things to correct there real quick. First of all, and this is just a pedantic point, we probably should say pederast priest, because that's about the act. Pedophile, while it's been used as a pejorative forever, really just describes someone who is sexually attracted or aroused by children, and that's independent from what they do, and that's not a choice or decision they made any more than they chose to like chocolate ice cream over vanilla. Those people are in need of help, but there are plenty of people who have those attractions who never act on them. So that's just a linguistic thing of I'd rather point to pederast priest. I don't look at individuals and sum up their character as a whole and say, oh, Don is more moral than Matt. I look at events and determine whether or not those events were moral or not. And so the atheist who's helping people could also be doing 1,000 other things that are, you know, much, much worse than, or at least in the same ballpark that we know about. So you can't summarize the whole of somebody's character by an individual act. And I know that's troubling for a lot of people, as is the comment about pedophiles, but it's just the way it is. I mean, I'm not defending, you know, rape is rape, and it's disgusting and awful always. Yes, we look at it as more horrific when it's, you know, done with children. There's no way to excuse. It's an inexcusable thing, and those people need to be held accountable for it. That's independent from what they're attracted. Just like if somebody was attracted, there's objectophiles who are attracted to mailboxes. They didn't choose to be attracted to a mailbox, and as long as they're not molesting my mailbox, good for them. But
yeah, sure.
I find it difficult to sum up the whole of somebody's character to say this is a good person or this is a bad person. But I recognize that colloquially, what we tend to do is there are some things that are so horrific that we look at it and just say this is a bad person. And I'm fine with that. I just don't tend to do it. I tend to talk more about what they've done as bad. Not even because I'm convinced that everybody's capable of redemption.
But let's get to the larger question of how would we judge a moral act?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say it was maybe an error on my part in the way of asking the question, but I guess I could reframe the question towards, you know, maybe their intent and their action. We could maybe say which action is better than the other.
Well, helping people is better than raping people. That one's pretty easy.
One promotes well-being and the other does not?
All right, so that was another point I wanted to get to. I watched your video on morality, and I agree with a lot of things. I disagree with some other things. One of the main disagreements I had was about how you're talking about morality is based on well-being, but you don't really go much further than that. I guess the thing that I would argue is that well-being isn't just an action. Well-being isn't an action.
No, well-being is
like
the state that you're comparing things to. And it's not completely understood, and we don't fully understand well-being, but we understand enough. So the fact that we don't have all the answers doesn't mean we don't have answers. Like, would you agree with me that feeding someone who's hungry is better than raping someone?
Of course, of course.
And we don't have to go to, the reason for that isn't because a God says so or anything else. It's about which one promotes well-being and which one detracts from it. Now, then you can have more complicated questions of, is it better for me to keep giving someone free sandwiches or to teach them how to be self-sufficient? Well, that's a little harder to figure out which one of those might be better than the other. But I would say that both of them are still on the good side of the line. And so pointing out things where we may not necessarily be able to say, this is morally right, because I think there are some things that are essentially amoral, where there's no more, like, it's not immoral for me to like chocolate ice cream.
Agreed.
Unless liking chocolate ice cream encourages me to buy more chocolate ice cream, which fundamentally affects my health, which affects the rest of my life, which can have moral consequences for the people around me. And if the ice cream that I'm buying, this particular chocolate ice cream that I like, is being, the ingredients for this are being immorally produced, and you've got child labor and all this other stuff, you could go down to my liking of, you could do that. You could say, oh, you like chocolate ice cream, therefore you're a shitty person because it has all of these other consequences. And it may even be the case that if I'm aware of those consequences, now it does become something where I'm immoral. But that doesn't mean that we're stuck, where we can't decide anything.
I agree. So would you agree that the action of somebody caring about the well-being of someone else, would you agree that that could be called maybe love?
Yeah, you could. It would fit. Love is defined in so many different ways. You could love, compassion, empathy. Empathy is probably where I tend to go.
Would you agree that God, in a general sense, has to do with power and authority?
I don't know which God. Which God are we talking about?
Well, I mean,
we don't know of any gods.
As far as the Abrahamic religions and their usages of the word God, as far as I understand, there's two main usages. There's, lowercase g and capital G. Lowercase seems to me to be geared more towards the
I'm sorry, I have to laugh. Mankind has invented, tens of thousands of gods. The uppercase G is used for a Christian God, and it's kind of like naming your dog, I think.
But what is it you're asking about?
Well, just that God, in a general sense, has to do with power and authority. Like, you don't call something a God if you don't see it as a power or authority.
No. There could be if, let's say, the Abrahamic God was real. I would agree that God is described as powerful, and I would agree that there are people who think that God has authority. I don't recognize any authority over me.
What about the deistic God who may have created the universe and went off for a fishing trip or something?
But also, power and authority aren't morality.
I'm sorry, what was that last question?
Power and authority, even if we said, okay, yes, the Christian God is portrayed as powerful and portrayed as an authority. That's not what morality is.
No, so basically the point I'm trying to get at is that God, as far as I understand, and you can correct me, in a general sense, in the Abrahamic religion in the Bible, is used to maybe refer to something that people worship or revere or value. And morality is based on well-being, because love is an authority on how we should behave.
No.
So I guess the argument that I was trying to get to with that is that because of that, God is love.
Yeah, no, that's absolute garbage from start to finish. And I can kind of explain why. So the fact, you're kind of like making an argument from analogy that, well, morality is a little like this, and that is derived from these characteristics like love, and God is a little bit like that. So now God is somehow tied to morality. Well, the truth of the matter is that the Abrahamic God, we have no evidence that it exists, but even if it does exist, and we go through what's written about him, what's spoken about him, it's a jealous God, a vengeful God, a loving God.
He's a fucking monster.
Yeah, he's a monster at times. Yes, he has power. Yes, he has authority. He's not in any way about equality or fairness or justice or the things that we actually value, because we now understand that those things directly contribute to the well-being of humans. Matter of fact, there's no evidence that this God cares at all about the well-being of humans. That the laws and instructions that he gives, there's no evidence that those are about how to have a better life. Don't wear polycotton blends. Don't eat shellfish. Don't pick up sticks on the Sabbath. Okay, wait, there's one here that says don't murder. Hey, that leads to well-being, therefore he got it right. Well, if I make a list of 100 things and you point to 20 of them in that list of 100 things and say, those are good things, therefore you're the authority on morality. When those things are mind-numbingly easy, I didn't ever need a God to explain to me why I shouldn't kill people. And I don't need a God to exist in order to have a rational justification for not killing people. I'd rather not be dead. Don would rather not be dead. Our continued existence is directly in the interest of our well-being and possibly in the well-being of society.
Yeah, hey, let's not kill each other.
Hey, it's really easy. Thou shalt not steal. How does that come about? Well, I have stuff. I'd like to have my stuff. I'd like to be able to keep my stuff. You'd like to keep your stuff. And so now we understand that the world is fundamentally better with us having some protections around our life and our stuff. Because if we got rid of those protections, then you could just walk in my house and take anything of mine that you wanted, and there would be no recourse for that. I couldn't even say, setting aside the law, I couldn't even say that was wrong of you. Except that we recognize that this is fundamentally doing harm to people. That's all we need. Well, why would we need more than that? And while you want to phrase it as like love, first of all, I'm not convinced the Abrahamic God has anything to do with love. And considering a lot of the conversations that I've had with Christians, including when I was, and even myself when I was a Christian, I think they have a very, very, very perverted view of what love is.
Well, I mean, 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7, I think
love is patient, love is kind.
Yeah, love is patient, love is kind. It doesn't envy, doesn't boast.
God so loved his child that killed him.
Doesn't envy, doesn't boast, and yet this God that is supposed to be the perfect thing, a perfect representation of love, is envious and boasts. As a matter of fact, the whole Moses
Jealous.
performing the plagues is God showing off, because what happens is. Moses comes up and says, "Let my people go," and Pharaoh's like, "Screw you!" And then Moses does something terrible, and Pharaoh said, "Screw you," and then Pharaoh's like, "Oh yeah, I'll let him go." And then what happens? God steps in and hardens Pharaoh's heart so that he won't let him go because he's not done fucking showing off yet.
So much for that free will thing.
Where is the love from the Abrahamic God ever? For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Well, okay.
So he could murder somebody.
Yeah. I'm the supreme loving ruler of the universe, and I make all the rules, and I'd like to forgive you, but I can't. So I'm gonna come down and take human form and have myself killed temporarily, give up a part of a weekend, and then I get to continue being God to act as a loophole for rules that I created. That's not love.
That's performance art.
Whenever my parents wanted to, needed to forgive me, they loved me. And they forgave me. I didn't have to do anything. They certainly didn't have to kill my little brother. Now go back all the way to the beginning, to the ridiculous Genesis story. God creates two people, plants them down here, and says, "Don't eat these two trees, but you can do, pretty much whatever you want to do with everything else." Now, what kind of idiot doesn't understand that as soon as you put two essentially children in a room and say, "Those are the two things you can't touch," they're going to go touch this. Well, of course, there's not a modern theologian that doesn't think God didn't know what was going to happen. Of course God knew what was going to happen. And when God comes down to the garden and is walking around going, "Hey, Adam, hey, Eve, where are you? Why are you hiding?" "Oh, we're naked, Lord." "Well, who told you were naked?" And this is God, from the Christian perspective, looking like a caring parent who's like playing hide and go seek with a kid that's behind the chair, and they don't have object permanence yet, so they think that if they can't see you, that you can't see them. And so God knows all this is going to happen, and God knows what's going on. He knows they're naked. He knows why they're naked. He knows exactly what happened and everything else. And yet he's walking along, and then all of a sudden it's like, boom, well, I told you, don't eat of that. And now you're going to, I told you on the day you'd eat it, you'd surely die, except that he doesn't actually do that. And through the whole story, the only one that told the truth in the entire story was the serpent. Now there's no love coming from anybody in that story. When he decides to flood the entire planet because he is screwed up, he's made people and they're just not doing what he wants them to do. Well, I need to reset. What kind of God wouldn't have known that was coming? Why would you need to push like if I create a Sims game and they don't understand me, that's my fault. And if I create a Sims game and the Sims start doing shit I don't like, I'm imperfect. That will catch me by surprise. But why would I ever create a Sims game knowing that they were not going to do what I liked, and then I was going to have to destroy all of them but 8 people, a drunk and his sons, and reset humanity after that? And then when that doesn't work, then instead of trying to save everybody, I'm going to pick out one group of people and say, you are my chosen people. Let's go out and kill all of the other people. None of this. This is what I talk about when I say that Christianity, Judaism, Islam, all of them have a perverted sense of what love is if they're trying to point to God as love.
No, I mean, they have plenty of verses that state distinctly what love is,
we're not interested in rescuing the Bible
for another person. So I don't understand how. I mean,
if I say to you, Rafael, I love you, and I do something nice for you, like I take you out to lunch, and then I beat the shit out of you, and I lie about you, and I spread rumors about you, and all these other things, and you come to me and you say, you don't actually love me. What good would it do for me to say, hey, I bought you a sandwich? You don't get to point to the things that aren't bad as a way of excusing the things that are.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, you're judging God's perspective from a subjective perspective, and I think that's kind of like
what other perspective?
I have children.
What other perspective could I possibly judge anything or anyone from other than my own?
Yeah, but that's not what I meant by that. What I was trying to get at was you don't not have children just because they might make some mistakes.
Yes, that's exactly why I don't have children. How do you know?
Well, I'm saying it is a perfectly, like, you can have children.
See, I love the way you phrase this.
And accept the fact that they're going to make mistakes.
Yes, but if you created the children flawed and you are the all-knowing, all-powerful creator of the universe and you intentionally chose to create flawed children and then decided to punish them for those flaws, you're a prick.
I mean, how do you know he didn't give us free will?
Well, because first of all, we don't have free will in that context. But second of all, what difference does it make? If God created you with free will, knowing that it could go wrong, and then punishes you for exercising the free will he gave you, he's still a prick.
How? Love by definition allows for free will.
Yes, but love by definition doesn't include punishing people for exercising that free will. Why is this so difficult for you to understand?
Actually, love by definition does punish people who act against love.
Really? That's what love does? That's what I'm talking about when I talk about a perverted sense of love. Yes, you can love someone and want to correct bad behavior, but you can do it in a loving way and not by creating a torture chamber in the basement where you're going to send somebody forever.
I mean, that's not generally the way I understand the Bible. The way I've understood it was God sends signs, God sends messages and gives people chances to turn their life around, and then when they don't, God has to be just.
Why?
Because God is love, and love takes care of its own.
I thought God was merciful and love was mercy.
Love is mercy, but
well, do you not? No. You can't have it. You can't have it both ways, Rafael. Justice means you get what you deserve, and mercy means you are exempted from getting what you deserve. You can't have both.
Those are two sides of the same coin.
No, they're not. Justice means you get what you deserve. Mercy is a suspension of justice. You deserve to go to hell, but God is going to be merciful and take you to heaven. That's mercy, and that's something that's designed from love. So you don't get to say that sending me to hell is just and sending you to heaven is mercy, and that they're both an exercise of justice, because you got something you didn't deserve. And so did I, by the way.
All of this, in a sense, kind of begs the question anyways. That you could replace the pederast priest with God, and you could say God is immoral, but the reason God would be immoral in the first place is because you would define him as not loving, but it's a whole loop again. It goes back to what I'm saying about morality being based on love.
Yes, it's a loop because you're in a circular argument that begins with God is loving and just when you don't even have evidence that there is a God, and all of the evidence about that God flies in the face of the claim that God would be loving and just.
So you're saying love doesn't exist?
Wow.
No.
You know, I tell you what, I'm going to let you go now, Rafael, and then when this clip comes up, I want you to go back and listen to it, and I want you to email tv@atheist-community.org with whatever sentence or word combination you think I uttered that made you think that I claimed that love doesn't exist, because what you're doing right now shut the fuck up. What you're doing right now is avoiding addressing the actual issue and making accusations against me that aren't true. I didn't say love doesn't exist. It doesn't, but I hadn't said that yet.
Well, no, I was asking a question. I was asking for clarification.
Yeah, questions don't begin with, so you're saying love doesn't exist. That's called a straw man framing, and trying to play it up as a question now means you need to go listen to that and write us.
Okay.
Good day, sunshine.
We didn't even get on the subject of slavery.
I'm trying not to do that every week.
Okay.
It's just too easy.
It's just too easy.
Yeah. It's funny because this actually the real problem was when we talked about, he wanted us to be able to sum up the entirety of somebody's character. And I said, I don't really do that. I don't sum up even fictional characters like the God of the Bible. I don't sum up his entire character as if he's good or bad. There are things that are attributed to that God, which I would say are good and loving, and there are things that aren't. But when you try to simplify it to God is love, love is what morality is about, therefore God is about morality. When you're pointing to the Bible, or the God of the Christian Bible, the only evidence we have is of that fictional character. And that fictional character is a mess.
Yeah, he's a dick.
Oh, I'm going to love you, but not you. And I'm only going to love you as long as you're doing what I say you're going to do. Oh, he beats me because he loves me. He punishes me because he's just. Well, where's the demonstration that what he's doing is just? How is infinite punishment for finite crimes just?
Let's make a deal with the devil and shit all over Job.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, destroy Job's life, because, this life is like dirty rags. The entirety of Christianity turns everything we know about human experience in life into a place, as you pointed out years ago, as a place to wipe your feet before you get onto the real life.
Right.
That's just bizarre. If the real life is what happens after we're dead, and God already knows who's going to the good place and who's not,
why bother?
Why didn't we start there?
Yeah. Why do we need a dress rehearsal?
Oh, well, you needed to live it so you'd understand it. Well, okay, could God not create me in hell with the understanding of how I ended up there without me having to go through all the work? Why do this thing with hell in the first place? Why create people? What was God missing from his perfection, which is already a conundrum?
Yep.
Or a
paradox.
So if God's perfect, he's not missing anything. But clearly he had to be missing something in order to create people in the first place. As a matter of fact, that was one of the first questions in oh, crap, I shouldn't. There is a book that I'm working on. It's not, there's a lot going on. But the first question is, why would God create anything in the first place? If I'm God and I know everything.
And you're perfect.
And I'm perfect. I'm not missing anything.
Why mess that up? Yeah.
And so, God just loved people who didn't exist so much that he wanted to give them existence, even though he knows it's going to be hellish. And that a good chunk of them are going to spend in it. He created people knowing that they're going to spend an eternity in some variety of hell, even if it's annihilation. Oh, it's this beautiful gift I give you. Well, send a fucking receipt next time, because I'm sending it back. Kelly in Iran, thanks for waiting. You're on with Don and Matt.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Matt.
Hi.
How are you? I'm sorry about my voice. It's a bit annoying.
Oh, it's fine.
Okay. I wanted to ask you. I've been looking into Matt's arguments against the causal argument for God's existence.
Okay.
And first of all, before I delve into that, the question that you raised just before answering my call, why would God create anything? It's a very interesting question, and I think I can offer an answer, at least from the Muslim perspective, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I mean, here's the thing. At least in the version of Islam that I believe in, which is basically Shiism, it's that God, I mean, even the Christian perspective on God, that is, he loves people. God doesn't love. He doesn't have emotions. He doesn't have feelings the way humans do. And that definition of God really troubles me. God is perfect, sure. And the way I see it is, it's in his perfection that led him to create people. We call it emanation. It's when God emanates being into existence.
Okay, so I'm curious as to how you know a God exists, how you know a God is perfect, and how perfection involves emanating beings.
Okay. So basically, the argument goes as follows. First of all, because we see that everything around us exists, and you exist, and Dad exists. Don, sorry.
It's all right.
That alone, based on the principle of sufficient reason, allows us to conclude that there has to be an explanation for why everything exists.
I would agree in the sense that if we begin with the assumption that everything that's part of a causal chain has some cause that preceded it, that it is reasonable to conclude that any observation has some explanation, not necessarily in the way that we might always think about it, because sometimes what we want to ask is, well, why is it this way as opposed to another way? And the explanation is it couldn't have been any other way. But even using that, observing that people exist doesn't mean or getting to the point where we recognize there must be an explanation doesn't mean that that explanation is God.
Oh, I mean, I see your point, but here's the thing. I mean, that entity.
How do you know it's an entity?
I mean, I'm using entity. You're right. That's a very good question. I'm using entity as a placeholder for something that I don't know, just for now.
Okay. If we would agree that you don't know, then how can you possibly?
Not yet.
How can you believe that there's a God as the most likely probable explanation that you don't have?
I'm reaching that point.
Okay.
Basically, what I wanted to say is that entity, which is for now, let's agree that it's something I don't know. It's not even a something. That entity has to have been one entity. At least we can agree on the fact that it's one.
No.
Why not?
Because if somebody said, what's the explanation for the Atheist Experience TV show? And somebody could argue that it's me. They'd be wrong. There's a ton of people that are involved in it. There's people on the other side of the wall. There's a long history to this. It wasn't just a single person. Now, we may get back to a point where there was one person in a discussion who said, hey, let's do a TV show. It was, but my understanding is that for this, it was Joe Zemecki and Don Rhodes and some others talking about it. But it would be wrong to just assume that it's one thing. Just like when a fire starts, there's a fire triangle, which involves heat, oxygen, and fuel. It's not just one thing that is contributing causally to fire. It necessarily is three things. So if there's something that we don't know what the explanation is, I don't know what justification you could ever have for claiming it's necessarily one thing.
Because, okay, that's a very interesting thing regarding the fire. That it requires three things. Because here's where I'm coming from. I see things that two causes can never result in the exact same thing in the exact same way. Do we agree on that, or?
No. Well, it depends on what you mean by exact same thing. For example, going back to so first of all, the fire, I still think that's a roadblock to what you just said. But if I roll a die and it comes up a 4, and I roll a die again and it comes up a 4, you could say, well, if we really look down and get, kind of reductive on this, these things happened at different times. And so everything about the physical universe was slightly different, et cetera. But the truth, the resolution at which we can reasonably define what happens to a die when you roll it is about the shape of the die, the surface that it's hitting, the physics. And yeah, it doesn't necessarily hit the same spot. But if you look at the result of it rolled a 4, that can arise from a multitude of different individual actions, right?
Of course, but my point is that there's only one hand throwing the die.
How do you know? I can throw it with 2 hands.
That's exactly what I don't.
And the table can have various.
Don and I can hold onto the die together and let go at the same time. Now there's 2 of us dropping the die, and it requires both of us to let go in order for that die to drop.
But it requires only one person for it to drop.
No, if I'm holding on to the 2 and 5, and Don's holding on to the 6 and 1, and I let go, that dice doesn't drop because Don's still holding it. And if Don lets go and I don't, the die doesn't. What do you mean exactly? I'm literally showing you that here's something that would require 2 individual agents to act in order for this to happen, and you're saying exactly it's one person.
I agree. I mean, that point is completely fair. My point is that you can't hold the die in a sense, and this on 2 ends of it.
Yes, you can. I can do it with the phone. Look, there's this side. There's this side, which is a little long for me. Then there's this way. And if I hold here and Don holds, no, not the same ones. Yeah, like opposite. Now, when I let go, the phone doesn't fall. And if Don lets go, the phone doesn't fall. You can do the same thing. This is an elongated cube, essentially. Or
These are really bad magic tricks, Matt.
Yeah, they're the worst, but I'll show you a better one later.
Okay.
All right. So what do you mean you can't hold a die by the ends when I can demonstrate to you that we can? If I had a die here, I'd show you with a die, but I was hoping that my phone, which is a good approximation of a die, would be sufficient.
I hope she can see us, but... Hey, sorry.
No, sadly, I can't see you.
Oh, my apologies.
It's okay. Can I give another example? Because I think that one would be fair.
Okay.
Basically, for example, if you're shooting a bullet at a window, if you're shooting, let's say, 2 guns, okay, and both bullets hit the window at the same exact time, the window will break. So you can say, sure, that the bullets, both of them, caused the window to break. But the problem arises when we think that there's no problem. It's just the fact that the 2 bullets had to exist in 2 different positions relative to the window.
Yes.
They couldn't.
And they break the window in 2 different locations.
Sure, but they don't break it in the exact same way.
That's what I just said. They break it in 2 different locations.
Exactly. So they don't break it in the same way.
So
they
what?
break it together, sure.
So what? I don't even know why you came up with an example of 2 bullets. See, this is like the guy who tried to point to the things that were good in the Bible as a way of avoiding talking about the things that are bad. I can shoot a single bullet at a window and it'll break a window. I don't need two for that.
Exactly.
So why would you come up with an example that doesn't require 2 as if it's a refutation of an example that does require 2?
Because this is a case where this is how the universe must have came about. And this
whoa.
It's a big leap.
How do you know how the universe must have come about? Because we're still working on that.
I mean, because here's the thing. The universe is a fact, isn't it?
There is a universe.
You and I are in agreement that the universe exists.
And I really hope we agree on that.
Do we agree that we don't know how or why the universe exists?
Of course.
Then why did you just pretend to know how or why the universe exists? If we don't know how or why the universe exists, you can't claim that the universe must have come from a single thing.
Because of the fact that the universe couldn't have come into existence.
That's not a fact. That's an assertion by you. You just acknowledged that we don't know how or why, and now you're going on to make claims about what you know about the origin of the universe.
I can start to see your point.
This is one of those things where it's our intuitions and our frustration with not knowing, where we look at this and we go, oh, well, of course, if the universe had a beginning, it must be something like this. And yet we also have to acknowledge that we don't know that we can't explore that we don't currently have evidence for it. The best thing we have is sort of, currently we have the modern Big Bang cosmology, but that doesn't explain the how or why. It's more of an explanation of what. And right now we can't even get back beyond the Planck time.
And there are whole realms of physics that defy intuition and our armchair understanding.
Yeah, but I think those are magical thinking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I am a big fan of falsifiability and demonstration, and the fact that you have a model that can make reasonable predictions is neat. But it reminds me of essentially like Newtonian physics, which it works well in the context in which it works, and yet it does not accurately describe what's going on at the universe at another resolution.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so until we're able to investigate and explore the universe at the particular resolution that we want to provide an explanation, it would be a mistake for us to make any kind of claim about what the nature of that explanation might be. For example, the origin of the universe, it could be the Abrahamic God. It could be the God of some other religion. It could be some sort of multiverse thing. It could be universe creating pixies. It could be, and I'm not saying it, let me correct this. I'm not saying those are actual epistemic possibilities. I'm saying that those are things that we cannot rule out. And so if I have 20 things that I can't rule out, and potentially an infinite pool of things that I know nothing about, not only can I not say that the answer must be one of the 20 things that I can't rule out, but since I can't rule out the things that I don't know, it would be a mistake for me to say that it must be one of these 20. That's the arrogance that we do. This is why the argument from ignorance, which is I'm right until you prove me wrong, and the argument from personal incredulity, which is I'm going to stick with this explanation because I can't think of anything better, are both more about us and our failure to recognize the limits of our understanding and our discomfort with saying I don't know. And so when somebody ask me, what's your explanation for the origin of the universe? I don't have one. Well, doesn't that make you uncomfortable? Yeah, it really does. I'd love to know. But the difference is I'm not willing to pretend that I know, and I'm not willing to make claims about the nature of what the cause might be when I have to recognize that I don't know anything about the nature of what the cause might be.
And how can you live with that?
Because
there's a lot of things we don't know, and there's a finite amount of time.
Because I'd rather live being intellectually honest and open to explanations that are supported by evidence than to say, wow, I don't want to live in a world where I don't know where the universe originated, so I'm going to make something up. The comforting lie that we tell ourselves is not, yes, people do that because they're just comforting. But your question of how can you live with that? If you pretend that you have the answer, you stop looking for the answer. And you mire the world in ignorance forever. And while it may be a comforting, ignorant lie, it's still a comforting, ignorant lie. And if you stop with that comforting, ignorant lie and say, let's go out and see what we can discover, we may never be able to know what the true explanation of the origin of the universe is. But as soon as we put up that roadblock, it leads us to the temptation to start putting up other roadblocks to things that we might be able to know. When religions pretend to have the answers to things that humans don't know, some people are not satisfied with the comforting lie. And so they go out and explore, and they find out, you know what? The Earth isn't the center of our solar system or the universe. You know what? Lightning doesn't come from Thor, Odin, etc. Sorry, Ocean. All of these things that we'd want to know, anybody can come up with religion that says, here's the explanation. Why do some men like men? What's the explanation for that? Why are some people born intersex? Why do some people have gender dysphoria and ideas like that? Why do some people have lighter skin and some people have darker skin? If we just went with what religions have claimed, we would
be poor.
The world would be devoid of technology, of understanding, of the sort of inspiration that makes you go out and look for answers. When you say, how can you live not knowing that? I don't know how anybody could live without realizing that they don't know it. Life is about this pursuit of finding out and understanding the world. And if you're willing to just take whatever comforting lie somebody offers you, I don't know that you're living. You're existing, you're persisting, but without that sort of curiosity, without this drive to find out what the hell is actually going on, that would be the life that would suck for me.
But my perspective is that, first of all, thank you so much for that. It really made me open my eye on several things.
I'm happy, thank you.
Yeah, but one of the things that I might disagree with slightly is the fact that living with a religion makes you so close-minded. I mean, one of the things you mentioned is gender dysphoria, and I myself have gender dysphoria, as you might have realized.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, in Iran specifically, one of the main things they were against was admitting that gender dysphoria should be treated, and men who feel that their women should be treated, and vice versa. This was an issue in Iran, and it wasn't solved, and it wasn't accepted until recently. But here's the thing: they accepted it. It was something that became, at the end of the day, something that's fine.
But to the extent that somebody's accepted it, wasn't religion a roadblock to preventing this from being accepted much, much earlier?
but here's the thing. My perspective is that religion was the thing that made people open-minded about it. It wasn't religion that was against it. I believe that the people were, and the religion helped the people open their eyes, in a sense, to realize that. Because in the Quran itself, it says, you should think. And at the end of the day, that was the thing that made people realize that it's not an issue.
What does the Quran say about sexuality and gender? Is it supportive of homosexuality? Is it supportive?
Homosexuality is a different issue. It's not.
Sorry?
It's not gender dysphoria. Homosexuality is not.
I know. I wasn't done.
Okay.
When it talks about homosexuality, I don't think the Quran's in favor. But when we talk about transitioning from one gender identity and expression to another, I don't think the Quran's in favor of that either.
It doesn't say anything about it, actually.
Really? Well,
yeah.
I agree that it probably doesn't use those terms, but
exactly, it doesn't.
But you don't think it talks about the concepts at all?
It talks about. I mean, here's the thing:
what it is to be a man, what it is to be a woman, what those roles are. Because if the Quran was actually okay with someone who was assigned female at birth, transitioning to a man to conform to their own understanding of their gender, then why on earth would we have different roles for men and women in the first place in different positions? If you say men can do this and women can do this, and then someone who was assigned female at birth says, "Oh, I'm going to transition and be a man," and
have more rights.
Now there's no reason to have those roles, where men have rights and women don't. I was assigned female at birth, but I'd like to drive a fucking car without having a male chaperone around me. So I'm going to transition to be a man. I understand that's not what the gender dysphoria is, but what I'm talking about from the model from the Quran, I think the concepts are there, that women are inferior, that they don't have the same rights as men. And so this notion of people, that's not what?
That's definitely not the reason I would transition to a man.
I didn't remotely say that that's why.
Okay, sorry.
Let me back this up, because I'm not talking about the reason that you would. Okay. I'm saying if you have a religious structure that says every man gets these rights and women don't, and yet we're okay with any one of you identifying as either man or woman, that erases the need to have the distinction between the two of them. And I don't think that that the notion of transitioning is consistent with the Quran.
But I don't get that point, honestly, because sure, it does talk about the different roles, but that's only as a social structure. It was talking.
It's all a social structure.
Yeah, so it was only talking about that. It wasn't touching on the necessity of not having or not allowing transitioning. I mean, sure, the roles are there, and that's exactly why I'm transitioning, because my inner self more agrees with those roles than other roles. So the roles are important, and they are there. I don't know if that goes against what you said, but I had to make that clear.
Well, we may need to do more research on the Quran, but certainly there's this idea in the United States of from the Christian community that God made you a certain way, and if you think you need to change, then you are wrong, and God is not wrong. There's certainly that idea.
That's horrible. No, in fact, God made you a certain way, and you're willing to change.
Prove it.
What?
Prove God made me anyway.
Hypothetically speaking, right?
I'm not an expert on the Quran, so I'm not going to keep digging in on it. But I find it bizarre, after having so many Muslim and ex-Muslim friends over the years, that anyone could suggest that the Quran is in any position other than directly in opposition to the notion that someone can transition gender. This is a concept that would not even have existed or been broached at the time in the way that we do it now.
Exactly. That's why it has no say on it.
Okay, that's absolutely ridiculous.
Why? The default position is that it's permissible unless stated otherwise, and it's not stated otherwise. Unless someone brings out a verse and explains it in a certain way, then that's a different story.
Okay, so here's a piece of advice. I wouldn't run around in most of the Muslim-led countries suggesting that the Quran is okay with people transitioning gender.
I definitely wouldn't do that. But I mean...
And why wouldn't you do it? Would you fear for your life?
No, because the version of Islam that they have is a horrible one.
Oh, they just haven't found the right Islam.
The true Islam problem, right?
Well, that's good.
Yeah, that's why there are different sects.
We know that one.
Yeah, we get that from Christians all the time. So congratulations,
You're
you're all
Christians.
engaged in the same sort of confirmation bias batshittery.
But my point was that that in Iran, I mean, it's widely understood. I mean, we study philosophy, we study ethics, and it's widely understood what the Quran is. It's just, for example, in Saudi Arabia.
What is it?
Iran is an unusual country in the education level of the populace, and it doesn't have quite the religious stronghold that other, like say Pakistan or Saudi Arabia has, as far as the strength of the religion and the power of the religion and such is a bit different there.
What this conversation's turned into, so there's a ton of different Christian denominations, and I'll stick largely with what I know. Bunch of gay-friendly churches. Mm-hmm. All over the place. There's one here in town we use on occasion for meeting place, crosses and rainbows all over. The Bible is directly in opposition to homosexuality. There's no...
Of course.
Okay. And so the people who are suggesting that Christianity is compatible with homosexuality are inventing a heresy. Now, I think... I'm in agreement with them about, homosexuality and rights and freedoms and stuff like that. But they're inventing a heresy. And so there's no way for them to show that they have the right version of Christianity and, let's say, some jackass like Steven Anderson has the wrong version. And yet you're calling in to talk about Islam and to say that, those other versions are wrong. Well, how do you know yours is right? Because wouldn't it also make sense that you have picked or massaged a version of Islam to conform to what you want it to be?
I don't know.
I don't either. And until somebody gives me a way to know, I'm stuck looking at both of them and saying, it's like, we'll go back to a die roll. Somebody rolled a die in a box, and neither Don or I can see it. Don starts the religion that the die roll was a 2, and I start the religion the die roll was a 5, and we are forever blocked from demonstrating which of us is actually correct, and yet we will fight wars and kill people left and right because I'm convinced that Don is a fucking heretic. How dare you think a 2 could come up? A 2, by the way, is always on the opposite side of a 5 on a correctly standard 6-sided die. So you are on the satanic. See, this is the way this works. And so to outsiders, we need some way to know how one comes about understanding that their version is correct. And it all gets back to the foundations that we were talking about earlier, where I have no evidence that a God exists. I have no evidence that a God participated in either the beginnings of the universe, the beginnings of the Old Testament, the beginnings of the Quran, any of these things. So quite frankly, I don't give a crap what any of the books say. None of them are authoritative or instructive for me. And when people point to them and say, this part of the book is not nearly as bad as the other parts of the book, we did that earlier with a Christian. So you're basically saying, hey, the Quran doesn't actually speak about trans issues, and since it's not expressly prohibited, then Islam must in fact be in favor of transitioning. And yet I bet if you were to go back in time and around the origins of Islam, around the time the Quran was written, and try to explain the concept of transitioning gender, I think that it would be prohibited based on everything else that's in there. It's just that they didn't have an understanding of this to actually prohibit it.
Yeah, it's almost like there's no real mention of lesbianism in the Bible, because I don't think any of the men who wrote it had a clue that existed.
It's like, what else isn't in the Quran? Prohibitions against manipulating DNA. Does that mean it's permissible?
No.
Yeah. Now, look, I want to backtrack a minute, Kelly, if I can, because I know that you are in a particularly difficult spot. And when we're on the show, we're having these discussions, and the whole thing is, tell us what you believe and why. And we'll look into this and, is there evidence for this, and is this reasonable? And despite what some people think, my goal isn't necessarily to convince people that their belief is wrong as much as it is to point out why I don't share their beliefs, why it's not convincing for me or us. You are in a much more difficult spot as a transgender person, as a Muslim. You're trying to find your way through all this, and
exactly.
I want you to know that irrespective of what you believe about a God or Islam or anything else, you are a valued human being with rights, and we are fully supportive of your transition process and who you are as a person, even if you wind up inventing a version of Scientology that is fine with who you are. My concern at the outset of this was when we were talking about, causality and origins and stuff. I just have questions, and I love the fact that one of your questions that I spent the most time on was, how can you live not knowing? That's the thing that most of us are uncomfortable with. And I hope, no matter what your view on religion is, I hope you find a way to safely and happily live your life as the person who you are. And one of the things that is incredibly liberating about not accepting religious claims that don't have evidence behind them is that I'm not in any way bound to them. I'm not beholden to anybody's antiquated ideas about gender. I'm able to actually explore things and come to new understandings of those in the same way that I can explore the universe. I mean, granted, I can't go explore the universe. I'm not
assuming
astrophysicist or an astronaut.
Limited human capabilities.
Yeah, I get your point.
But we are completely in your camp with respect to your life and who you are and what your rights should be and how you should be allowed to live your life to the fullest as the person that you are. That's really secondary to the God thing. So just because I'm up here in debate mode going, well, that's bullshit and that's bullshit. What about this? What about this? I don't want that to be taken as anything other than an academic exercise, which is actually, for me, that academic exercise, despite the fact that's what we do, it is of secondary importance. I'm a humanist.
I know.
I'm a skeptic, and I'm an atheist. And of those three, atheist is the least important part, because if there's ever evidence for God, that's the part that goes away, but the skepticism and the humanism don't.
That's very inspiring, actually.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we've helped a bit. I'm going to try to get on to some other calls, but call us back and let us know what's going on. And if you come up with more questions, whether they be academic exercises on causal arguments, or maybe you find something in the Quran that is more supportive of that. At the end of the day, though, even if there was a surah that said, irrespective of the gender assigned to you at birth, all people are free to transition, identify, and express gender in whatever way they want, because gender is just a bunch of BS, at least in the societal context. I mean, nobody's denying that there's not genetic differences between, individuals, but there's probably as many genetic differences between Dawn and myself as there is between, myself and you, or myself and a cis woman, or whatever else.
Yeah.
We kind of did the same thing. Well, I'm not gonna go down another sidetrack, but I get that you think that the one thing you said that bugs me a little bit is that you thought that religion made people open-minded about this stuff. And the reason that sticks with me is the sum total of my entire life's experience, including all of these years talking with people who have different religious beliefs, is I'm not aware of any religion with any sort of significant adherence that encourages open-mindedness. Some of them play lip service to it, and then they set up protective barriers. So like, you know, Christianity has verses about thou shalt not, or you shouldn't put the Lord your God to the test. You know, God, this is how we get to God works in mysterious ways within Christianity, and why prayer tests fail. But my commandment is put everything to the test. Question everything. Question every answer, every authority. Don't sit there and, you know, it's not like you're mired in questions all the time. It is exercise reasonable doubt and try to make sure that you're not convinced of anything until there's really strong evidential warrant for it.
Yeah.
And that is what open-mindedness is, not thou shalt not. That's not open-minded. You have to live this sort of way. You have to pray 5 times a day. You have to, you know, face Mecca. You have to, you know, wear a niqab or hijab or whatever else. You know, these sorts of things. You can't be out. You know, these sort of legalistic, prescriptivist instructions don't ever seem to me to come from a mind that is either open or encouraging an open mind. And I find it fascinating, curious. I'd love to, I mean, send us an email because I'd love to hear more about why you're convinced that it makes people open-minded.
I mean, honestly, the thought experiment that you gave me made me kind of doubt that.
Well, cool.
When you told me about if I went back in time and told Muhammad, sorry, I was gonna that like I described my situation. Yeah, I'm starting to doubt that, honestly.
And Islam being significantly newer, you know, I've talked to Christians before and pointed out, if you grabbed 10 Christians from today that are in different denominations that agree and disagree on different things, and you took all 10 of them back 150 years and introduced them to 10 different Christians from their denominations, if those denominations existed, they wouldn't recognize each other and they wouldn't agree. They wouldn't agree on morality. You know, you look back to the 60s when women were wearing miniskirts and people were like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. And of course, each year the world supposedly gets worse and worse and worse. And yet the stuff I see people wearing into church now would not have been acceptable when I was going to church as a teenager for people to walk in wearing church. And it's because, hey, wait, the Bible doesn't say anything about what you should wear. Well, actually, yes, it does. You're not supposed to wear mixed fabrics, and you're also supposed to dress humbly, and you're not supposed to put makeup on, and all these other things that are in there. And yet, Christianity has conveniently ignored those. And it's moved forward and is more accepting of some things. But it's not the religion that is making them open-minded. It is the influence of the outside world that says, no, you don't get to tell us what to do anymore. And that seeps in and it corrupts Christianity. It's the reason that all religions are going to die.
Wow.
Long, slow, painful death.
It's going to take a long while. I mean, I've got pretty good job security here, I think, even though this isn't a job.
Not in our lifetimes, man.
Anyway, Kelly, I really appreciate the call. And by all means, email us, keep in touch, let us know how you're doing and you know, where you come out on this stuff. And if you find better arguments, we'd love to hear them.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Before we go to the next caller, I just finished reading a book called Sapiens, which is kind of a 20,000-foot view of the history of humanity. It's very interesting. One of the points that's made in the book is around the 1300s, 1400s, instead of making up shit on a map for the stuff they didn't know, they actually started saying, we don't know this little thing over here. And the map started, you know, saying, hey, this is terra incognita. We don't know this.
It went from there be monsters.
Right. Or we're going to make something up.
It's perfect. Exactly.
Yeah. And that really, the point in the book was that really drove an exploration. Let's go fill in that map.
But what if you sail off the edge of the flat earth?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Okay. So we're getting low on time, right?
That's what happened. It's
Yeah.
the Bermuda Triangle where all those planes and everything in the boats is supposed to go missing, which, by the way, this is a joke. There's nothing to this. There's no Bermuda Triangle. There's not a Bermuda rectangle, parallelogram,
that one's
anything.
kind of fallen out of favor.
But, it's basically you can make the argument that really what's happening is that those planes went through a vortex and then disappeared over the edge of the flat Earth.
Oh, I thought they were having Mai Tais on the beach.
It could be.
or drinking rum, at least. Yeah.
We are 10 minutes past when the show's going to end, and there are still like 4 callers to get to. So I have 5 minutes left, and I don't want to, before we actually have to wrap it up, I don't want to be rude to any of these calls by saying, okay, you've got 1 minute to explain to me what we got. So here's what we're going to do. It's currently 10 after 6. If you're on the phone, stay on the phone. But we're at the Atheist Community of Austin's Free Thought Library. There's a bunch of people on the other side of the glass, and there's people out back. And I believe, has food arrived?
I'm smelling.
Yes, I'm smelling things. I see people nodding like, yeah.
There's ice cream.
Yeah.
Ice cream. Yeah.
Speed it the fuck up because there's ice cream that's going to melt and food. So I'm going to let all the people here at the building head off and start eating. I'm going to stay here and do an after show thing where I try to get to these 4, if you guys stay online, I will try to get to all of you. But I want to say thank you to everybody for tuning in today. Thank you, Don, for coming in and presenting another failure, participating. The people out there who are eager for their ice cream. The folks on the other side of that wall right there, our crew, who are the ones that make all this show happen.
They're awesome.
Special thank you to patrons and donors and members. And don't forget about the back cruise. We're just over 1 month away. And despite the fact that we will probably only have the one boat, and we were going to expand it to 2, but I think we're probably only going to have one boat, so there's not going to be as many tickets as we thought there were, and we're like halfway there. So atheist-community.org, you can go there to get information and click a link there to buy tickets to the back cruise. Dave Warnock will definitely be here. There may be other speakers as well. We may have a variety of things going on that day. We're still fleshing it out, but if you saw Dave on here a couple weeks ago and have visited his site and seen more talks from him.
It was last week, wasn't it?
About dying out loud. Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to both the talk and the back cruise, not just for the people who will be there, but because we'll have the chance to have Dave back, talk a little bit more about his story and what's going on in his life. And then we're going to have him sit on the show on Sunday after the back cruise and take calls again, because that was important. And it impressed on me quite a bit. And so we're really looking forward to have Dave back. With that, I don't have any other announcements.
Okay, let's end the show.
Thanks. See you next week.